No, oh, I've disappeared. Right, that's better. I can see you now. Right. Feet hip width apart. Try and keep your feet parallel. Drop your hips back and just start to turn. So you want to get a feeling of your torso sliding down between your legs. It's a useful way, if it works for you, of understanding how it feels to root down, that sort of draining down feeling. You can do it like this in other ways, but it's just more difficult. So we use this slightly wider stance to help us to get the feeling, which we then apply in different circumstances. So this, or even just maybe slightly wider, which is what I tend to do. Weight forwards, settling just behind the ball of each foot. This is exaggerated, and you can see if from here I let my hips drop back, you'll hopefully get a view of this dropping down. It's this kind of feeling. It's like you're dropping down. It's like if you can imagine sitting into an armchair and you sit back and it's like the arms of the chair rise up either side of you. That's kind of what your hips will feel like. Pelvis hanging down, and of course your legs take the load. Your legs are now working that much harder. And at this point, it's not a deep stance. One of the advantages of deeper stances is that they condition the muscles of your legs so that this is more comfortable. And we don't often talk about conditioning in Tai Chi, but it is a factor. And you have to bear in mind that any kind of physical activity is going to condition your body in a certain way. And so you have to be careful not to confuse, say, aerobics with what we're doing. Aerobics will work your body in a particular way, but it doesn't necessarily prepare you for Tai Chi any more than Tai Chi necessarily prepares you for aerobics. We have our own goals, our own aims in practice. And one of the key ones is to really release this central area of the body between hips and waist, the lower Dan Qian. And the reason we put an emphasis on that is because actually we work from there. When we turn in the middle of the body, we affect the whole body. If I come closer, then if I just let my knees move, you can see if I do this, I don't do this by the way because you'll damage your knees, but you can see by turning there, everything in my body moves, both apart from my feet, but even there, if I allowed them to, my feet would start to move. So much of the training is to develop this awareness of how the center part of your body connects to, say, your fingertips and whatever. So don't do this. This is your shoulders. But just place your hand, place one hand on your front, one hand on your belly, one hand on your lower back, and just this is the movement that we're working with here. And you can see it's actually not very big. If I again come closer, and if I try and make it bigger, look what happens to my knees. And I don't want that can be very damaging to the knees. I get more movement if I just let my arms drop down, then they'll swing around. So I'm just looking, see if I have it. Never mind. You imagine that you're moving through water or I've used various images with all of you to try and encourage an idea, an image of how the movement feels. We program our body with these images, and this is again one of the reasons why the mind training is very important, because at this point it's 4:05 and you've got another 55 minutes of trying to maintain and hold that image of moving through water. That's quite a difficult thing to do, and not only do you want to try and hold it, but you want it to be in the back of your mind. You don't want it to be forefront and have to think about it, because you won't be able to think about anything else. So we have to train our awareness to be more constant, be more settled. Because if your thoughts scatter all over the place, now I could be standing here teaching you and think, oh, I haven't read that book for a long time. Oh, sorry, I forgot all about it. We don't want to lose that focus of attention. And that's a difficult one to hold. But if you can do that, then you'll start to experience, hopefully, a change in how you're moving. Because our expectations of what we're about to do and what we're doing affect how we use the body. If you've ever gone to open a door, go to open the door and it's sticking. So first of all, you just do that. It doesn't work. And then you move differently because you've got to give it a good pull. Or if there's a bag on the floor and you're expecting it to be quite heavy, but you don't realize someone's come along and emptied it, you go, well, I've got to pick this bag up, and you kind of go, oh, hold on, you're expecting something heavier. And what we're trying to do in Tai Chi is to program that sense of moving against a certain type of resistance, so that our habitual way of movement engages more of the connection, more of the strength of the body. So eventually, when you're walking down the road, you should be walking down the road as though you're doing Tai Chi. So what's happening in your back? There's big muscles in your back, the smaller muscles between the vertebrae, and as you move, there's an interplay between them. Some extend out, some contract. See if you can just be aware of those patterns. Broaden your picture of your body, and more of your body will engage with the movement. And then just raise your arms. Don't let your hips come up. Don't lift your shoulders. Let your elbows hang down. And then shake out. It's important to realize that this is not about mind over matter. We're not trying to force our body to do anything that doesn't come naturally to us. We're not trying to force our body to do the wrong thing, to overcome very important restrictions. What we do is we cultivate the movement. This is mind and body integrating, interlocking, supporting each other. So if you, the example I sometimes give to people, you've got, say, a rose bush in your garden, and you decide it needs a bit of pruning, and you want it to grow in a particular way. You don't go out with a machete and just start hacking away at it, because it's not going to do what you want. You go out and you look at the bush and you have a think about it, and you think, well, I want it to grow that way, so you cut certain things out and encourage other things to grow. And in the same way, as we become more aware of the movement, then we start to work with the body in the same way. So we go into the familiar movement, sinking down and pushing up. So once we've got a familiarity with the movement, and we always start off simply, and you've done this exercise with me loads, all of you, so should be fairly familiar. You shouldn't have to think, oh, what's he doing with his hands? And you kind of know what's going on. You can then bring that trained awareness, that more focused awareness, into your body again, and notice how your body's doing the movement. You commanded your body, you used your intent to say to the body, do this exercise. So it does the exercise. You see, it's doing this and it's doing this. And some things you might want to just try and avoid doing. Other things you might want to try and encourage. So if, for instance, you notice, if you look at my shoulders, if your shoulders are doing this, going up and down, you might think, well, that's not right. You don't want your shoulders to go up and down like that. So you might use an idea of somebody leaning on your shoulders to keep them down, or just go a little bit easier with the movement. So we're constantly refining, we're constantly cultivating how we're doing these movements. We're constantly learning from them. Now change to the wild goose. And then parts in the clouds. One more time. Take your time. Your arms hang down. Feel the weight of your arms hanging from your shoulders. Push up on one side. Your elbow comes up, pulling your fingers up. Your elbow drops down, pulling your fingers down. Switch your attention to the opposite side, not too quickly. Try and take the movement straight up. Don't do this. See where my hand is now more on the center line of my body? That's not the movement that we're doing. If you watch my other arm here, my fingers get pulled straight up. My elbow goes out a little bit, if anything. It's a bit exaggerated, and then straight up the side. And don't look up. Keep your head nicely aligned on your spine. Looking ahead, chin pulled back just a little bit. If you do this, then now the weight of your head is pulling you backwards. So your head rests on your shoulders. So you're feeling up. If you've ever tried to get something off a high shelf that you're pretty sure is up there, then you sort of reach up and you kind of feel around. You're using your fingertips. And in the same way, you're just feeling through your fingertips. One more time. The same here. Now, just do the first movement. And once again, trying to keep your body aligned. What's very common, I don't really know why we do it actually, but this can happen very easily, that you're leaning backward. But I want to be here, the shoulders in line with my hips. And once again, I don't want to look up because now I'm stumbling backwards. And then pushing out and turning. So one of the reasons we do so much work on posture is because, again, the feet are wide enough apart for your torso to slip down. It's easier to keep your body aligned. And so that aids the flow of the internal movement, the energy moving through your body. As soon as you sort of, for instance, start leaning backwards, you'll create points where areas of the body where there's a blockage. And that will break the flow. And then changing. How we think about the movement changes how the movement works. So with this one, if we think, well, I've got to lift the arm up, then we're straining the shoulder, we're straining the arm. If you think you're just pushing the heel of the palm down, that creates a movement that naturally circles around. And it feels much different, much smoother on your shoulder, or my shoulder at least. You don't need to lift your arm if it's moving because it's attached to your shoulder, hopefully. So that means that the next stage of the exercise, the turn, can be done from a position that is a lot less stiff, a lot less strained than it might have been. And switch sides. And then add in the turn. Now rowing a boat in the middle of the lake. Remember, hips going back. From the side, I push up. I don't lean forward. I simply push my hips back, sink down. And I don't pull myself up by my neck. I let my hips drop back and my head floats up. One more time. And then polishing the table, turning, and once again, the hips. My hips go back and I swing round and I come back up. I do this one-handed. I just put one hand on my lower back to see what that hand's doing. You normally do it with both hands, of course. I just wanted you to see the movement. It's not always clear. So Tai Chi is described as an internal art, and one understanding of that is that where we work with the patterns of movement inside the body. So the external movement, I wouldn't say it's not important, but it's secondary in a way. We start by learning how to do, if you like, the choreography of a movement. But actually what we do is we learn that movement to find out what's going on within the body when we do it. And then we build it up into the movement that is seen. One more time. Okay, and then just drop your hands down. Shake it. I'm going to do a new movement with you. It's very simple, but I was teaching it to a fairly advanced group last night, and I noticed most of them were actually tilting their body over. So I'm going to start you off with just the movement in the legs and the feet. First of all, just a slightly wider stance and moving from side to side. The reason I asked you to take a slightly wider stance is it's only a 60% weight shift. So this is all you'd get if your feet were closer together, hardly any movement at all. So we go into the horse riding stance. This should help you to drop down between your legs in any case. And now you can actually see the movement. You can feel the movement more easily. Go across into your left leg and just turn. And what you want to do is to rotate around the center line of your body. Not this, but this. And then you go across to the other foot and you turn. So this is the core of the movement. And just recognize how that feels, because when we bring our arms into the movement, there'll be a strong temptation to overdo the arms, as there always is. Now, just moving from side to side with your hands in front of you. And we're going to start doing the movement quite small. But I will say to you at a certain point, build the movement up, build the range of the movement up. But don't do it and compromise your alignment. So the movement is very simple. It's just a figure of 8 on its side, or if you prefer, an infinity symbol. You go across, turn the hands, palms of the hands, most of the time will face the direction of the movement. And you can gradually get a little bit bigger, come around more to the side. And this is the bit where people seem to be making the mistake. They're doing this. It isn't this, it's this. And then I turn, it's here, not here. So you can only bring your arms around as far as the center of your body will turn without you throwing off your posture. At this point, what you want is your hands to come down into your hips. They come up, they go out a little bit, and then back down. The great thing about this, it's a very simple exercise, but there can be a great deal going on. This time, when you come into your right, as you turn, you can let your left heel come up, and you'll turn a little bit further. But again, don't do this. Do this. Keep upright. So be very aware in the back of your mind of the feeling of that upright stance. And that's good that the heel can come off like this, because now what you can do is you can step in. And then you step out again. You step in, and as your hands come up, if you're steady enough on the leg, you raise the knee. Step out. So you raise the knee, the foot comes off the ground, and then as your hands go down, the foot goes down. So there's a connection between your hands and your feet. They work together. One more time in this dance. We're going to come back to this movement when we get into the bow stance. So just let your arms rest. Step forward with your right foot, transferring your weight. Now, as you do this, bear in mind that we're not going for speed. We're not going for big steps or anything like that. And anything like that, we would have to use the upper body more. But in fact, we've got a relatively short stance, still wide, of course. And so we can keep our upper body upright. And that means that as you start to raise your toes, so you go back, you raise your front toes, you go forward, let the knee come forward and bring up the heel. The movements with the legs are about the legs. So legs, hips, maybe a bit in the lower back is where the effort's being made. So when we bring the foot in, it's this, not this tightening of the shoulders. And we push out just as far as it's comfortable. Your leg expands and contracts. From the front. If you want your foot to go higher, what you do is you get to here and you pull the knee up, and that's a rotation of the hip. Once again, you want to avoid doing something like this. Keep that upright stance. So again, there's a great deal of conditioning that goes on. The muscles around your hip, buttocks, lower back, going down towards your knee are probably working a bit harder now. And then on the other side, transferring your weight. And raising your toes and your heel. Stepping in. And then step through. Then with the foot goes out, keeping the width of your step. It swings in and out. In another direction. Now, just shake out. I'm going to show you a little exercise to help you understand how the leg feels when we do this movement. I'm going to use a little cushion. This isn't quite high enough actually, but it will do to illustrate this. So what you do is you find, if you've got a patio in your garden, for instance, and you've got a step, you can do it there, or you know, if you've got one of these step aerobic things or something like that. But being next to something, you'll need to hold on to something. Now, when I come up on this, you'll notice my other leg is hanging down. Not quite enough, but this can give you an idea of the weight of the leg. And then you just start to swing it forwards and backwards. It's a nice exercise, actually. It's really good for the hip. There's this one. And it gives you an idea of just how you're moving the leg. So I'm not doing this, because I'll just fall over if I do that. So obviously be careful with this. And you can feel the leg hanging from your hip. If I do it sideways on, it's a bit more difficult. So you can see it going forwards and backwards, but you can also do this. And just notice how the leg moves and how it feels around that area where your leg meets your torso. As I say, it's a nice exercise for the leg. You'd have to do it on both sides, because otherwise you'll end up walking like this or something like that, because the leg will feel longer. So it's a good exercise for the legs in general. Let me get rid of this. And it shows us how when we go to take a step, the same thing is happening. The leg swings, it comes in, and it just naturally swings out again. If I exaggerate, see my front foot is turned out, and actually there's a little bit of this, but I'm going to do it much bigger. I turn. So when I turn, that automatically brings the foot in. So what will happen is this. The leg just swings out again. Those of you who have done this exercise with me, where we do this, this is a good one to practice that feeling as well. But you know, if you can find somewhere where you can stand up and have the space below your empty leg, it's actually quite a revealing exercise. So let's just try the walking again with that in mind. Remember, you know, because we're focusing on this, you may want to just stand next to the wall and actually stabilize yourself doing that. In the end, we would like to do that without having to do that, of course. So from the parallel stance, turn your right foot out a little bit. So I'm exaggerating some of this. And as you go into your right foot, notice how your body's turning. Notice how that can bring your heel up. So you come in, you just release the foot, and then step out and turn the foot out a little bit. So as you come forwards, your body can turn a little bit. This is a bit exaggerated, but once you've felt it, then you'll realize that you can do it with a smaller angle in the foot and a less obvious turn in the center of the body. So we feel again how this part of the body moves the legs. We can feel how it moves the arms, but we're not always aware of how it moves the legs. You might even want to place your hand on the belly so you can feel them moving. Same thing going back. Now, if we were going to move from that into what I think of as ordinary walking, everyday walking, we do want to build up a little bit of momentum, usually. So let's say we're walking to the shops and there's no ice on the ground or anything like that. So we want to get a bit of a swing, and we use our arms to help with that. What we also do is we angle our bodies slightly. Again, I'm exaggerating, but we do this, and we sort of almost fall forwards, but we let the legs swing through in exactly the way that I've been talking about. So there's two things to think about there. I was talking here about a horizontal rotation in the center of the body, moving the leg. But when we do this, it's a bit like when we do rowing a boat or polishing the table. There's a vertical rotation there. And what stops us falling forwards is not straining in our back, but our hips going back. So that feeling of the hips counterbalancing the forwards movement and that rotational quality will help with the stepping. Ordinary stepping, just walking down the road to go to the shops or something like that. And effectively what we're doing is this and then this. I'm exaggerating immensely. These are movements that we feel inside the body you wouldn't normally see. And again, that's where that idea of focusing your attention into your body to see how your body is working becomes very important. So there's a lot going on in those walking practices. Now, have your right foot forwards. Place your hands on your belly. Let's do pigeon spreads at wings. Going forwards, opening in the front of your body, and drawing back. One more time. And then fisherman cast the net. and pushing away. Now push forwards. Your body's moving forward, your arms are moving forwards. Once again, they swing upwards. You don't have to lift them. In fact, the feeling that when you push somebody on a swing, what you do is you push them forwards and the swing curves up. And if you kept hold of the swing, then your hands would just get drawn up in the same way. And it's actually, if I move my arm forwards, then sooner or later it's going to go up because it's attached to my shoulder. So we don't need to sort of do this or strain to bring the arms up. If our movement is correct and the posture is correct, then our hands will naturally rise up. So we don't need to do this again. Now, come back, bring your hands down. This time, turn, bringing your hands up, go forwards and turn, coming down here. So the same exercise that we did earlier with the figure of 8, infinity sign, however you care to think about it. Turn in, transferring your weight. And turn in, transferring your weight. And again, you can start to raise your toes and your heel. But again, keep your body upright, don't lean. And again, as with the parallel version, we can bring the foot in. Still as though you're moving through water. Your whole body involved in the movement. Try not to just swing your arms around. Good. And again, just shake it. So again, your arm, if I do this, then I'll just do it with one hand. Then if I do it with enough energy, then eventually this will happen. My arm will swing over. I'm not thinking that I've got to lift my arm up. So when I do this, the curve naturally takes my hands up. All I'm going to do is to keep moving, and then it comes over. What you don't want to do is to get to here and feel that you're kind of straining, because now I'm throwing everything out. So all Tai Chi movements should be doing this, and it adds another dimension to this exercise because it's the same connection. So we feel the center of the body moving, and we feel how the arms move as a result of that movement in the center of the body. All movements in Tai Chi should work like that. Everything that we do in these sessions. Some are more obscure than others. Interestingly, although it's a very accessible exercise in many ways, I think it's not so clear how that works in Pigeon Spreads Its Wings. So with some movements, what we have to do is try and apply what we've learned from other exercises to that exercise to see if we can get get to the heart of it. So again, pigeon spreads its wings. This is with the left foot forward. Sorry, I should have said. So once again, if you can see my shoulders clearly, what I'm not doing or trying not to do is this. It's this. And then fisherman cast a net. Again, from the side, you can see that the slight curve there. So again, moving with the natural patterns of movement of the body, following the path of least resistance, not straining for the movements. And yes, I know you said about the conditioning and so on and so forth, but the conditioning is there to help you understand how you make these movements without stiffening up. You have to use the whole body. Can you still feel your feet, your legs expanding and contracting, the movement in your hips? And then pushing away. And then back to the figure of 8. And with the hands coming close to your hips, extend out, and then they're brought back to the hips again. Toes and heel beginning to come off the ground, and that will help you to feel the beginning of the movement in the legs, the energy coming from the center of your body. Then you can step in. Sinking down. So you're moving through water still. Feel that resistance. Again, notice that my shoulders aren't coming up. And if I do this and my shoulders come up, I start to fall over. I've got to keep the alignment of the body. So it's quite challenging. This time, turn it into a step-in movement, whichever direction suits you. I'm going to go forwards. You can go back as well. Wasn't a very good step. This is a good exercise. You can adapt it to whatever space you're actually in at the time. I've got just about enough space to take 3 steps. In the morning when I practice this, I can go a lot further. You can go in different directions, forwards and backwards. But I can also change direction. I can go to here. I can think, well, if I turn my body, I could go in this direction. So you could go round in a circle, for instance. You could turn. So you can play around with this exercise. I've probably gone off camera now, haven't I? And back, so I can go from here. I think, well, they can't see me anymore. I better turn this way. And you notice, so it's here. When the foot is off the ground, is when I make the turn. I think, well, I'm here. Now I want to turn that way. I'm here. Now I want to go back. Here. Maybe I go forwards again. And then I'm here. And again, I can turn, and so on and so forth. So it's a useful exercise to play with. And you, again, you can start to really feel what's going on in the stepping, how you're making the figure of 8 movement. And then just bring your feet parallel. So it's very simple, and it's one of several exercises that I do. That I think, in a way, they're sort of halfway exercises between the individual Qigong exercises and the Tai Chi forms. What you can do, because there's a little bit more going on in them than just a simple stepping, and you are stepping and moving your arms at the same time as you would, the whole body is moving in that sense. But because you're repeating the movement over and over again, rather than in a Tai Chi form where actually you do 2 or 3 of something and then you move on from that, and so on and so forth. So one of the great things about it, if I do this and I kind of, oops, I make a mistake, I can think about it. I think, well, what went wrong there? How can I improve that? Whereas if this is in the middle of a Tai Chi form, I'd have to remember that I need to work on it, and I couldn't do it till I got to the end of the form because it would interrupt the sequence of the form. So there's this one. If you know the one, why tape offers fruit, that's another exercise you can do that with. And they repay long repetition, long sequences. Try and do them for kind of like 10 minutes. And let your attention really sink in. Once again, training your attention to really be in your body, and not just in a passive way, but to be part of the movement, to observe the movement. And it's a constantly evolving thing. I won't say changing, that makes it sound too kind of hectic. So they're nice. It's a nice little pattern to play around with that with. And it doesn't matter. I've got very limited space here, and I wouldn't have enough room to do even a very small Tai Chi form. But I could play around with this. I can think about how I'm going to make a turn. What happens when I go back? Think about the relationship between hands and feet, and so on and so forth. So play around with it. It's an interesting little exercise. And as it happens, this session today is being recorded. I don't normally record the Thursday session, but today it is. So this session will be up on YouTube later. So if you want to revise it, you can come back to it. Now just rubbing your hands together. and tapping over your face. And then over your head and neck. One shoulder, your arm. The other side. Your back. Around your hips. Right on your belly. The upper part of your chest. Okay, so embrace tiger, return to mountain. Coming back to the parallel stance, sinking down and pushing up. One more time. And stand. And check out. Lovely. Thank you very much, everybody. So, still got a bit of a sunny evening, so I hope that you might get a chance to enjoy it. Hopefully see you next week at some point. All of you have a good weekend. And as ever, thank you very much for coming.
Thank you, Mike.
Yeah, thanks.